Reese kept plenty of late nights as the alpha. It would have been foolish to expect anything different, even on the night before the marking. The halls of his castle were quiet by the time he wrapped his meetings and left his office. He caught the scent of one of Trinity's guards down the hall on the second floor. He frowned. They were meant to guard her, not wander the castle in the wee hours of the night. Reese followed the scent to the library. He expected to see Wesley reading, but the young guard was slouched on the floor beside the door, fully asleep. A flare of fury rose in Reese. First, he had welcomed the formerly independent wolf into their pack a year ago, and now he had given this newbie the opportunity of a lifetime. And this was what Wesley did? "Get up!" Reese growled at him. Wesley jerked away with panic all over his face. "Alpha!" Wesley scrambled to his feet. Reese still towered over Wesley. "What are you doing here?" Reese demanded. The Luna wanted to read, so I brought her to the library." "And you fell asleep while guarding her. What if someone had broken in?" Wesley paled even further. I'm sorry. It won't happen again." So many promises recently. Wesley would need more training if he was going to stay a guard around here. The little bunny seemed to like him, though. Reese stepped back to give Wesley room to scamper away. "Mess up again, and you will find out how unforgiving I can be. Now get out of my sight." Wesley ran like a frightened rat. Reese turned his attention to the library then. He slipped inside, and that's when he spotted Trinity. She was always so small, but curled up in one of his chairs. She seemed so fragile. A wave of protectiveness hit him. She finally looked comfortable. It felt wrong to disturb that. Besides, his mate was his responsibility.
It had to be a dream. That was Trinity's first thought at the weightless feeling in her body. Like some childish bridal fantasy, the Reese of Trinity's dreams cradled her in his arms. Her ear rested on his defined chest, so his heart drummed like a lullaby made just for her. He smelled real, but the real Reese would never have carried her so gently. That wolf threw her over his shoulder like nothing. But this midnight version of her mate was like a lit candle, hot and mesmerizing. She nuzzled her nose into his shirt to hold onto the feeling. He chuckled beneath her. Trinity cracked her eyes just enough to see a gentle smile on his face. He had never looked at her so softly.
"Such a handful," he whispered.
"Yours," she whispered back. That's how she knew it must have been a dream. It didn't sound like the taunting challenge it should have been. It sounded like she meant it.
Reese walked slowly so as not to wake her. He did his best to ignore the feeling of her breasts brushing against his chest. Her dark, brown hair hung loose. With each step, it flowed across his arms. He couldn't resist the smell of her hair. He pressed his nose to it, inhaling, and his wolf went wild inside of him. "Yours." That's what she had said. As he tucked her into bed, he wondered for the first time if she might be worth the trouble.
Trinity jolted at her alarm. She grabbed her phone off her nightstand and frowned when the charger cord stopped her. When did she plug that in? In fact, when did she get back to her room at all? She was still in last night's clothes, tucked under her covers. Wait, did Reese really carry me? That didn't sound like him. It sounded more like Vincent, her usual guard, or Leslie, the one who'd brought her to the library. Well-meaning worker wolves, not the grandstanding, punishment-threatening alpha she was mated to. Or maybe he's warming up to me, she thought. Maybe the thought of their marking ceremony made him sentimental. She slipped from her bed to wash her face. She didn't need to do anything else since the marking was that night. No use showering now, when she would have to get ready for their big reveal. Her stomach flipped nervously. What would it be like to stand in front of their pack with Reese? Sure, the usual sneers would happen. But there would have to be awe, too. People would finally see her worthy of their time. And then there was Reese himself. While they hadn't gotten too friendly over the last few days, there was something undeniable brewing. It amazed her when she thought about it. Mate bonds really were as powerful as the story said. A mate was your other half. Every inch of you yearned for them, and fate would always push you together at all costs. Wolves felt incomplete without their mates. Trinity didn't notice before because she felt incomplete already, but now, around Reese, she felt invincible, though she tried to remind herself that could be adrenaline from fighting so much. She didn't need to delude herself into thinking that they would fall in love. They still barely got through breakfast. Their mornings had a rhythm now. Either Vincent or Leslie would guide Trinity to the kitchen, and she and Reese would eat in silence. Even today, on the day of their marking ceremony, Reese chose to wait to talk to her. Her whole body hummed with nerves and questions. She wanted to ask if he was nervous too, if he would carry her in life the way he had last night. Could they become more than a sham of fate? Reese cleared his throat, and Trinity glanced up to see him staring at her for once. Their eyes locked. The pull of the mate bond warmed her entire body. Her rational mind quickly gave way to his need. Staring into his eyes was like falling into the deepest pool. Most times, the pool was filled with acid, but that morning, it felt like honey, soothing, inviting, and sweet.
I have a meeting with the elders after breakfast. They would like you to be there, he told her.
Do you want me there? She wondered. She didn't dare ask. All right. Reese narrowed his eyes. It was as if he knew she was holding back, but he didn't question her on it this time. He simply led the way to his office once they were done eating. Reese sat behind his desk, and Trinity sat in a chair beside him. Noble waited until they were settled to lead the 5 elders into the room. About tonight, Elder Michael began as he took his seat. This must go perfectly. Trinity was to get ready before sundown. The ceremony could not happen until it was fully dark. She would wait in the trees with Vincent and Leslie as Reese addressed the rest of their pack. When the time came, Reese would come to her. He would guide her to stand atop the podium stone in the lunar clearing. The bright white of the stone reflected the moon and stood out against the red of the rocks and the dark mountains around them. There, with the full power and view of the goddess moon, they would feel her connection. Once Trinity was there, Reese would announce her as the new Luna and his mate. Then Michael would come forward and help them finish the ritual. The marking is a cross between a political oath and a marriage ceremony, Elder Frederick offered. You take your vows, and then Reese will mark you. A shiver raced down Trinity's spine. He would do a targeted shift, only bringing out his long, lethally sharp wolf teeth. He would sink his fangs into the soft flesh where her neck curved into her shoulder. It sounded terrifying, exciting, and sensual all at the same time. The first time her mate would ever put his mouth on her would be in front of their entire pack. She glanced at Reese to see if he was nervous as she was. Instead, Reese looked angry and annoyed. Was she really that repulsive to him? If the elders weren't there, she might have teased him about it. She knew that it would have been considered embarrassing to do that in front of them. One of the other elders bowed his head to Trinity. There's no need to be nervous. All you do is relax and let the good alpha handle it. Trinity nodded. Thank you. Those were the first words she had spoken since the meeting began. We will be there as well, Luna, Michael said, offering a comforting smile. I sure hope so, she said as a joke. The meeting wrapped up shortly after that. The elders left, and Trinity lingered in the room as Reese stayed seated at his desk. Trinity longed to feel some sort of connection with him before she left to rest and prepare. Some true sign that this day would be more than the cruel formality that she had first thought it would be. She turned in her chair to face him. Guess I'll be a mouthful this time. Reese's eyes darkened at the phrasing. Trinity blushed, embarrassed, as she realized what she had said. It was meant to reference that he called her a handful last night. Maybe that really had been a dream. He hadn't brought up carrying her since their breakfast. She sounded ridiculous. The joke worked, though. He relaxed slightly into a smirk.
Rest, little bunny. We have a long night ahead of us.
There was something husky and loaded in his sentence. Did he only mean the marking? Or was there something else that followed? Her heart sped up. How was she supposed to rest now?
Don't let your excitement die! The full audio series is on the Pocket FM app. Tap the link in the description to install now.